Good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. As always, Muddy Waters Podcast exists to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state. And we do that not by me doing a bunch of research and telling you all the wonderful things that I know, but by bringing on guests who have experience from around the state in a number of different capacities. We've had parents, we have journalists on here occasionally, business owners, politicians, and people involved in the party. And today, we are fortunate to have with us. There are a number of titles that we could use for Demi, but former chair of the Maine Republican Party and former U.S. Senate candidate in Demi Kouzounas. So thank you so much for joining us.
How are you? And thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I'm doing great. We're just loving the wonderful state of Maine. Aside from Maine politics, although within Maine politics, there's been some fun stuff recently. We have the gift that keeps on giving. In the Senate with Graham Plattner, and he just, it seems like every day there are new revelations about how depraved this individual is, and so that's been fun. And if he runs all the way through till November, then I think that could really help our chances across the state. If this is who they want and it shows who they are, I think that gives us a great opportunity to use that to our advantage. I think that the Democrats will probably find a way to remove him, however, because I don't think it's really. I think they see the writing on the wall here, and they don't want to continue to be hosed for the rest of the cycle on this guy alone. How he got to this point is beyond me. How they didn't do a better job understanding the situation and realizing that the people of Maine are not down for Nazi, communist, and then all the other stuff. Um, so anyway, that's been a lot of fun.
No.
But that aside, I wanted to have you on partly because you are the former chair of the Maine Republican Party. And it would be great, I think, for people to have a better understanding of what that is. But I also think you're a really interesting person in Maine's politics, and I think you were the chair for quite a while. So before we get into like what you did as chair and what that whole process is like, what it's like to be the chair, I would love to have you just tell us like who you are, where do you come from, and like how did you like the whole story of how you got from growing up to going through business and then eventually getting involved in politics. What brought you into that? But yeah, let's start with like who you are, where you come from, and go from there.
Yeah, and actually, when I do tell my story, I kind of every so often go, yeah, it is kind of a weird story. So, anyways, I'm a first generation of Greek immigrants, legal immigrants, right? My dad married at 50 to my mom, who was 20, brought her here to the United States. I'm the oldest child of four girls to my parents. So I went to school speaking Greek before I even spoke English. So I'm truly get the immigrant, you know, part of what makes United States so great in the first place, because we have a tendency to poo-poo immigrants. We should not be we should be welcoming as long as they're legal, and that's always where I stand. And my parents were illegal, and I 100% believe in that. Anyways, my parents, being immigrants, really pushed education. And I was one of those geeky kids that went through high school here in Saco, the same town that my kids went to school at Thornton Academy. Then went to University of Maine, Orono. And how I knew Charlie Webster was because I was in the same sorority with Charlie Webster's wife, which is such a small world. Anyways, graduated from there and met my husband, and we were the first married couple ever accepted to Tufts Dental School. So my husband, which by the way, today happens to be our 48th wedding anniversary, June
Oh,
3rd.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, so that's kind of cool. So we were the first married couple accepted to Tufts. We went in there as a couple, where with medicine, legal, dentistry, high divorce rate. We've stuck together. Graduated, of course, with crazy amount of debt because we both, my husband being from Portland to Italian immigrants, we both were poor kids. So once we graduated from dental school, We were trying to decide what we're going to do now. Interest rates in 1981, 82 were about 20%. So we weren't opening a practice anytime soon. So we made the decision to join the U.S. Army. Now, at the time that we joined the military, we did ROTC at ahead of time. So they were not going to pay for our education. They did not pay for our education. But we were able to get a 3-year reprieve on starting to pay back our loans. And so, especially when we decided to go overseas. So we made the decision to go we tried to go to Italy, didn't work out, but we ended up going to Germany, outside Frankfurt, Germany, headquarters of that part near the Fulda Gap, which is at that time the Cold War. So we went to Germany. We're there for 3 years during Cold War. So we're still kind of wartime veterans, which is so weird to say, but we were there both as officers. We were dentists, and we were there for 3 years. I was one of the younger dentists to graduate. I was 25 when I graduated from dental school. So this was good for me to mature and grow and learn my trade. Also, learn what it was like to be in the U.S. military and believe in our country and understand. And what I realized in a lot of ways was how Europe really didn't understand how much America had done for Europe during World War II. A lot of the young Germans were not taught history. So they thought that basically it was the Americans that built the wall, dividing East and West Germany, not the Russians. And I was, wow. Yeah. So again, how important is history, right? We need to always understand. And so it made it more solidified who I was as a human being and why I believed. My parents always told me America was the best country in the world, and it only helped me solidify that. It also realized, for all the talk about Europe and how welcoming and how, I have to phrase it as woke it is, they have the right to discriminate. If you're wearing a uniform and they don't want you in that restaurant, they could ask you to leave. We were friends with one of the dentists that my husband worked with, Dr. Dana, out of the mid United States. He was Black, and they didn't want him in that restaurant, and they asked him to leave. They asked us to leave because he was Black. So Europe. Wow. I'll tell everybody till they're blue in the face, you can live in Germany all your life, but you ain't going to be German. You can live in France the rest of your life, but you're not going to be French. But in the United States, you can be an American. And we need to understand that. But it did shape how I was and how I felt about our country. It just made me feel more proud to be an American. On the last year we were there, with our deployment, I had my daughter, Nicole, and we made a decision where we were both dentists anyways, and we had a child. Did we want to make military the rest of our life, or did we want to get out and open practice? So we made a decision to come back home to Maine, open practice, be close to our families, and have our daughter be raised in Maine and not, as a military bred, if you will. So we came back, we opened practice, we bought a little strip mall, we worked hard, almost 7 days a week, raising a family, 2 of us working at the practice. And then I started doing a lot of volunteer work in Portland. We started a program to see kids for free in Portland, immigrant kids or kids that were very, very poor in Portland. So I started getting into that aspect of my life. And with that continuing on and looking for legislation, I got involved with the Maine Dental Association, so I became president of the Maine Dental Association, and on their legislative aspect of the Maine Dental. And I was there during the period of time that we were trying to open UNE Dental School. And Paul LePage was then, the governor. The state of Maine did give UNE $5 million to help open the school because we knew we had access to care problems in northern Maine. We didn't have enough dentists. Of the 650 dentists in the state of Maine, maybe it's close to 700 now. About 200 of them are in just Cumberland County and York County. So we've right, because that's where the money is. Yeah. So I worked in that aspect, and going from that aspect, I started getting more an understanding of government, because I'm a math major. I'm not a history person. So I learned a little bit more about how government works, how you have to advocate, you have to have a seat at the table. So that made me start thinking, you know what, maybe I should just run for office. So at that time, I knew Charlie Webster. I knew Charlie Summers very well.
And so for the people who have not been steeped in Maine politics, who is Charlie Webster and who is because like I
Charlie
think
Summers.
in
Yeah.
Charlie Summers, I know that Charlie Summers was a guy who was considering a run for governor and maybe he ran in the past.
Yes.
But I Charlie Webster is a name that I've heard, but I don't necessarily I think he's run for something big in the past, but I don't remember yeah, I don't necessarily know them and I think some of the younger people who pay attention probably also don't know.
Charlie Webster used to be chair of the Maine GOP, and he was their chair during the big 2010 when we got the governorship, the House, and the Senate. And that was the
Okay.
last time that we had really, the state was almost considered red, if you will.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had known his wife. Charlie Webster was very good friends with Charlie Summers, who was the vice chair of the Maine GOP and had been a state senator. Both Charlie Webster was a representative and Charlie Summers was a state senator and also ran for CD1 in the past. And I think I can't remember for sure, but I believe he might have, I don't know if he ran maybe for US Senate too. I think
Okay.
he did. So they were both very involved. Charlie Summers, I knew from the practice. And so they one day called me up and said, we want you to run for the House seat in Saco. So I had to put a lot of thought to it. And then I thought, I've always said you got to have a seat at the table. So yeah, I'm going to do it. So my opponent was Barry Hobbins. And I went to high school with a sister. So it was the lawyer in town running against the dentist in town. And so it was a tough race. I hit every single door. I did everything that Charlie Webster told me to do, but it was a D town, right? So and Barry Hobbins did say that I was one of his strongest opponent ever, and so I think I did a pretty good job. But I all of a sudden realized the vacuum that existed. Like I didn't really get a lot of help. I didn't, I was doing the doors every Saturday by myself. I think I ran clean, but it wasn't the money so much as it was the help, the support, people being behind me. I was so green at this. I had never done this before, so I didn't know what I was getting into. And so afterwards, I remember calling up Charlie Summers and I said, "Oh my God, I lost. I'm embarrassed. I don't even want to go to the grocery store. People will see me as a loser. No, that's Demi the loser." And he said, "Oh God, no, that's not the case at all." He goes, "Demi," he goes, "you did really good." He says, and I said, it's like preparing for a marathon and you trip at the last, mile before the finish line after you ran the whole race. And he said, but you didn't lose. You gained so much information. You understood what you were getting involved in. He goes, stay involved. He goes, that's the best thing you can do. So that's what I did. So I got involved, and I got involved with York County, got on the executive committee. And then when there was a void, I was called up and said, you should run for vice chair of the Maine GOP. And so I did, and I won. And so once I won the vice chair, it was 2014. 2014 to 2016 was when Trump was running for president. And I got involved with making Maine great again. And with Ray Richardson, with David Jones, I'm trying to think of other people, Julie Sheehan. I mean, there's a few of us who got very involved. And we came within 2,000 or 3,000 votes to giving President Trump the state of Maine.
Yeah.
So he wins as president. I think at that point, Rick Bennett, who was the chair, decided he wasn't going to run again. So I threw my hat in to run for chair. And lo and behold, I became chair of the Maine GOP. And I did sit down with Governor Paul LePage, and he said, why should I support you? Why should I endorse you? And I said, because I'm a woman, I'm from Southern Maine, and I will bring I'm a strong Republican, and I'll bring a military veteran. I'll bring my set of healthcare, my past with me to kind of not reshape, but make our tent grow bigger, which it needed to do.
Yeah.
The Maine GOP And I hope my intention of being on this podcast obviously is not to offend anybody, but to more give some of my knowledge to those that are willing to listen. The Maine GOP for me was much, and I'm not here to insult anybody, but it felt like a little bit more male dominated from Northern Maine, bringing a lot of the Northern Maine conservative values, which
Well,
is which
I
is
think
fantastic.
I think we have a challenging, like Maine is a very challenging state to have a statewide party that tries to represent the whole party. I feel
I
like
agree.
I'm reminded of the movie Braveheart where the nobles are conspiring. Like this one guy with his son is like, I will say this in this to curry favor with these people, and you will say this down here to curry favor with those people because like similarly there are basically so many different versions of Maine has like 4 or 5 different cultures and different regions that have very different I think cultures within it, and so that makes it really challenging to be a party that's trying to represent the whole party when I think partly because of the culture of the rural communities who just are mad at the fact that how liberal the southern portion of the state is, they kind of have this view of that like anyway, I think it's
I agree.
challenging. I think
I
it's
agree.
challenging and I think we have to be willing to say things that are not necessarily everybody's going to be in love with if they're
Yes.
true. And I think so. I just want to free you up to say whatever it is that you need to say without like it's not about throwing people under the bus. It's about expressing actual challenges that
Yes.
exist. Um,
No different than I was watching the returns at 12 or 1 o'clock last night of California.
yeah,
Everybody thinks California is Los Angeles, but California has the west side of California is very Republican.
yeah,
But what
Northern
people
California and the West. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So what we have a tendency to do is, at least I think, at least at the beginning of when I became chair, was we have a tendency to do what the Democrats are doing now, and it's failing badly, is to use a litmus test. If you don't believe that you can abort to the last day when the baby is getting ready to be born on the same day and kill the baby, if you will, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of other issues, small government or this and that, and no government help with this and that. We can be libertarians. We can be, Christian conservatives. We can be conservative, but more like small government conservatives. We can be a lot and still be under one party. So that was my intent of becoming chair, is to be somebody that doesn't look like somebody that would have been chair of the Maine GOP.
Right.
And I know
Yeah.
I don't, I bring a medical background. I am a veteran. I'm first generation Southern Maine. And the final thing was I didn't want to be compensated because Maine, there's only probably 30 states, I think, in the country that compensate their chairs. The rest do not.
Mm.
And I thought, right. And I thought the state of Maine is too small and hasn't raised enough money to do that. Never to say that it's right or wrong. That wasn't my point. Is let's start raising more money because we're always outraised. We always outspent. So,
Well, and I think because of the fact that we're outspent, we have to be wiser with the money that we do have. And I think that's right.
absolutely.
We have to make our money go 5 times as far as what the Democrats' money goes.
I,
Um,
Exactly correct. So I got involved and I started realizing quickly, because what I did is I said, I'm going to look at things completely different. I'm going to see what are the Dems doing right that we're doing wrong. And one of the things is they get a lot of out of state money because they know Mainers don't have money.
yeah.
Even if everybody gave us $5 or $10, it still wouldn't be enough, right? We only have a million point 2, 3, and we wouldn't get, even if we got half the Mainers to give us money, it still wouldn't be enough. So then I started trying to figure out how they were doing it. So what I did was I got really in tight with the RNC. And I became then about the last 2 years, I became co-chair of the Northeast area of the RNC. And became more important to the RNC. They started looking at Maine and saying, yeah, we could probably take Maine. Because I can tell you, President Trump and the Republicans do have no understanding why the Northeast, like California, is such an enigma. They can't get their hands on it. And, you're talking about, even New Hampshire.
Mm.
It's a struggle. So, and I was, by the way, working with Mike Watley at the time. We were working hand in hand because he was the Southeast chair.
Yeah.
So I got very involved. We got quite a bit of money coming in. What I think happens, and this is just what Mainers sometimes do, they think it's like you build the church and the flock will show up and donate money. And it'll just, if you build it, they will come, kind of, like, the baseball story. And I was like, I don't think that's the case. And it wasn't the case. You still
Yeah.
need a dynamic, pastor to pull in that flock. They'll come maybe once or twice, but if they don't like what the guy's saying, and they're not going to come back.
Yeah, well, I think there's that, and then there's also like again, especially from one of the biggest elements is the financial side, right? Like you also need to be able to show results. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have. And I noticed becoming the chair of the Cumberland County Republicans, I was like, oh, I'll just reach out to people and try to get them to donate money to the
Exactly.
CCRC. And I found very little positive response. Now, then I started moving into doing events like we have tomorrow at Throttle Car Club, where there's got to be some sort of an attraction to it, and then you can get people to sponsor and get people to pay to come. And that's a much slower and more challenging way to raise funds than getting people to give. But ultimately, in order to get people to give money, you have to show what it's going toward. Then people don't just want to give money because they're Republican and they're like, yeah, I just keep losing. Here you go. Here's another 50 grand, right? They're not going to do that. And that's one of the challenges you have in a state where we have, outside of the blip of the LePage era, we've largely not been able to be as successful as I think Republicans would like us to be across the state over the course of the last 40 years. And so it's really challenging.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, being a chair of a political party is challenging. Dem, Republican, local as you are, state or federal, it's just a tough, tough job. 100% true. And we have to come together. We can't win separately. And so we need to, if I can say anything to the next chair of the party, it would be pull your team together, listen to what they have to say, and work on and putting some of these ideas together instead of kind of, if you will, shouting from the top, this is what has to be done, and you will do it. It will not work. And we're a very, Democrats say we're a diverse group. Republicans, we're a very diverse group too. Most people will come up to me that I haven't seen in a while, and they'll say, nah, you're not a Republican. You sure you're Republican? You must be just you're a closet Democrat, aren't you? Because they can't fathom that I would be a Republican. And I'm like, do you know how much money is squandered on things that we don't need instead of really taking care of the folks in the state of Maine? Tons. And there's the problem. We throw money, we got to do another study on if the whales are really going to be impacted by the wind turbines,
Yeah.
we got to do another study, and that's going to be $1 million. You know what you can do with $1 million in medical or dental health? Tons. And there you are, and nobody is saying it. And that's what I was hoping to do. But you know what? I did the best I could. I ran for then Senate against Angus King because actually nobody else was going to do that. And we couldn't have let Angus King go unopposed. So I have no regrets of doing that. And then, I became, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I became 70 years old. I don't know how the hell that happened, but it did. And then my husband was like, can we retire now? And I'm blessed that my daughter and my son-in-law are both dentists. So we gifted one practice to them. We sold the Skowhegan practice to one of my students because I was an externship site to UNE Dental School and was training dentists there. And we made a decision just this year to become Floridians because Maine didn't do what the rest of the country is, which is not tax people's Social Security and retirements.
Mm.
And so I was like, yep, then you've pushed me out. I didn't want to leave, but you pushed me out. And this is what's going to continue happening. People will walk in doing politics, if you will.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously one of the biggest challenges we face. I was having a conversation with somebody who's kind of jumping into politics now, And looking at where we were, because you talk about where we were when you guys did the Making Maine Great Again PAC and tried to get Trump elected in 2016, and I think we lost by 2.5%. You have the numbers of votes, but I think it came to about 2.5%.
Yeah, I
Um,
couldn't remember exactly, but
yeah,
yeah.
but I think you had 2,500 votes or something like it was a
Yeah, yeah.
small number of votes, but now I think Trump lost in 2024 by 6.5%. And I think a lot of that is some of that is migration, right? Some of that is also like TDS, like
Absolutely.
but the reality is we are that's one of the struggles that we're facing. We're like in the minority party in terms of like there are less Republicans than there are independents or Democrats. And so that's challenging to be able to win in the first place. But then on top of that, you have people migrating away and people coming here to try and turn purple Maine blue. Um, and so that creates a very real challenge. And again, it's hard to argue with your decision, right? Like the amount of money that you save by primarily living in Florida like I mean it's enough money I know that there's some cheap real estate down there, so you could buy a senior home with 1 year's savings for some based on what some people are making in their retirement, so in tax savings, or at the very least over time. So it's hard to argue, like it's a
Yeah,
lot of money. I had a
yeah.
surgeon, a former surgeon. This is years ago before I was involved in politics. Don't mind that my shoulders are disappearing. But anyway, I had this former surgeon say that like basically by moving and redomiciling, whatever you want to call it, to Florida, changing his official residence to Florida, that he was going to save $30,000 a year. And so like it's a substantial amount of money, and there. And I've again talking to some other friends who have bought some property at like senior condo association things in Florida. They bought one for like in the $30,000 range within the
Yeah,
last 5 years. Like,
yeah.
and it's not a bad place. And so like there are things that you can do. And so it's like, wow, that's 1 year's savings allows you to buy something. It's really hard to argue with that. And so and that's a challenge that we face here. But so I completely understand where you're coming from, and I would have a hard time not doing that myself. But to go back to like your time as the chair, I'd say you were the chair for, you said 3 cycles, which is like 6 years,
Yes.
and you were
I
the
was,
vice chair for 2 years.
yes. So,
Wow.
so, and ran for House, and was on the executive committee at York County for
Yep.
one term. So absolutely. And I still did things on the side after I was done being chair. I was the one that had spearheaded getting signatures to get Trump on the ballot in
Yep.
2024. By the way, how many people do you think the state of Maine that I know would not sign his petitions to get him to run for president again? You'd be shocked. I have all that list. And
There-
and
Yeah.
and you see, we should be doing as Republicans, and if there's any advice I can give, is sign everybody's. Who cares? Let the people
Yeah.
then make a decision when the curtain's shut behind you and you have to pick. But you know what we have a tendency to do is we think we can pick winners and losers, and the minute we do that, instead of standing together as a party, which is why concern in this election cycle, if we don't stand together as a cycle, we don't win, folks. We just don't win. We win when we stick together, and we have to put. Listen, I've said it on the campaign trail a trillion times. My husband and I, especially when we were raising our children, did not agree with each other 50% of the time. You know, don't give him the keys. No, I'm going to give him the keys. Let him drive over here. No, don't give him the keys. And we would fight over nothing. And we still laugh about it to this day. But we were still a family. We were still a couple. We were still parents to our children. Republicans have to understand. You expect your legislator or your candidate, or maybe your fellow Republican, to agree with you more than you would with your own spouse. And yet, right? We'll argue,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is what you think. I'm going to use the most hot button topic, abortion. You think that, even, I don't know, the first week, I don't believe in, conception, is life, this, that, and you start arguing. Folks, you're still in the right direction. You may not agree
Yeah.
100%, but you're in the right direction.
Yeah. No, I think that those issues, just in general, right now, I think one of the problems that I see is being an outsider. So like I was not a Republican. I've always had conservative values. My values haven't changed. I just for most of my life was like I really don't think the party is actually do what they say they're supposed to do, right? And so I was like, I didn't, well, was not registered as a Republican, except I did vote in the 2016 primary for it was going to vote for Ben Carson, but I ended up voting for Ted Cruz, which I now regret. But anyway, but I registered to vote in that primary, and then I unregistered at the next time that I voted. I unenrolled, I should say, from the Republican Party, and and stayed registered to vote, obviously. And it wasn't until I ran in 2022 and I was like, I need some support. I can't do this on my own, which, going back to, didn't really get much support. But at least the Republicans didn't run another person against me. So I think that was part of my calculus is like a lot of people thought we were going to have a red wave. And I was like, if I run unenrolled, I have a better chance of winning. However, not if the Republicans put somebody up. And I think at that time, the way that things, everybody thought that there was going to be the red wave that never came that we sometimes talk about. In 2022. And so anyway, in order to run, so I made the calculus that I should probably run as a Republican. And that's when I registered within the party. And so as I've kind of like dove into the party, one of the things that I see is that you've kind of got two schools of thought, and it's much more complex than this. And you talk about how the Republican Party is diverse, just like the Democrats. The difference is the Democrats are diverse physically. And sexually, we'll say, like in like sexual preference and skin color and origin, all that's their diversity. Their diversity is not diversity of thought, right? Their uniformity of thought and diversity of like skin color and gender and pronouns and sexual activity, which is anyway. And then the Republicans you actually have some diversity of thought. So it's a little bit more complex than this, but it seems to me that there are basically largely two factions within two ways of thinking about things in the Republican Party. One is that the reason that we don't win is because we don't have enough purity, and so we need to out all of the what we call rhinos. And if we can get rid of all of them, then we will be successful in winning. Until we get rid of all of them, we will continue to lose, right? And so that's one school of thought, right? The other school of thought says, look, especially with the state like Maine, look at the demographics. If we run on like super strict conservative values, we don't win a state that doesn't have those, which is the state of Maine. And so better to like build a coalition party, which is our only hope of being able to win, of people who also are frustrated about what the Democrats are doing, but are not necessarily 100% aligned on all the issues, such as abortion. Like I think everybody who's in almost everybody, I think everybody who's in the Republican and most of the people that are independents and even a significant portion of Democrats agree that abortion all the way up until birth is evil. Like once the baby can survive outside the womb, the vast majority of Mainers and Americans agree that that is wrong. Like you shouldn't kill. Like the baby can survive, have the baby, give it up for adoption. There's tons of people, that can't conceive and would love to have a child, right? That is the opinion of the vast majority of Mainers, right? We can agree on that. We don't agree on everything beyond that. Like there are some people who are all the way to they don't agree with abortion in any scenario. There are others who believe that you should only allow rape, incest, mother's life's at risk. And then there are others that again there's a paradigm or a spectrum here. And I think there are some people that say, unless we get everybody to agree right here on this, they have to agree with no abortion at all. Otherwise, they're an enemy. And we need to get rid of them and purify the party. And I just don't think that wins in Maine. But I think that's one of the thought processes. That's one of the challenges that exists, is that like people are trying to do these purity tests rather than trying to figure out how can we work together. This is my philosophy, right? You can see what side I'm on. Is let's beat the radical Democrats. And then once we've defeated them, we've rubbed their faces in the dirt and we've taken back control. Then let's fight about these other issues. But until we defeat them, it doesn't matter how pro-life you are, if you want to look at that spectrum, because it doesn't we can't do anything about that issue or really any other issue that are facing Mainers um, being in the minority, which is what we'll continue to be, if we don't figure out how to win. And so, again, I don't believe the philosophy that we need the most, because like I think like you look at Paul LePage, and I think Paul LePage is a good example of this, right? He is a conservative Republican, right? Has all the values that the purists, I think. There's some issues that some people took with how
He's got some libertarian leanings.
he does, but like his the way that he communicated about abortion aside, right? Like he I think his point, what he was trying to make, was something that Trump did a little bit better of a job communicating, which was basically that
Yes.
he is a pro-choice, pro-life person, but that he's not going to change the regulations. That
Yes.
was what he was saying. Is like it isn't. It's not up to him to make that decision and change that, even though he personally believes. Like the viewpoint is from a governmental standpoint. He doesn't believe that it's his role and responsibility to change that, but he does. He is a pro-life person, and so anyway, so like when you look at his values, like he has the values of what a conservative is. And as good as he's done, and I hope that none of the LePage people get mad at me because I'm just reciting history here, right? As good as he was as a governor, he never got 50% of the vote, right? Like his first term, he won largely because we had a divided, right? You had a divided Democrat Party because Elliot Cutler, who really was basically a Democrat, was more popular than the Democrat candidate and ran as an independent and was able to split the vote. And so that's how you got Paul LePage. And so that's how we got a real conservative. That's the chance that we have for a real conservative, a strong conservative, to win here in the state of Maine. And even when we had LePage, we didn't shift to the right. Maine didn't become more conservative. We didn't have more people registering in droves as Republicans so that we became the majority party in the state of Maine. No, that didn't happen. So we have an example here in the state of Maine of the fact that's not how it actually ends up working in reality. And so I think we need to embrace, as you were kind of saying, and kind of your plan was going in to be the chair of the Republican Party, which is that we need to have kind of what Trump built in 2024, which is a coalition party, recognizing we don't have to agree on everything, but we need to agree on some core elements that the they've gone crazy. The Democrats are spending money like it's going out of control. Radical socialism, boys and girls sports, abortion all the way up until birth, to hell with parental rights, right? Woke nonsense everywhere. Um, and we're against that. And we can unite around that and then fight about other stuff later.
Well, what they're trying to do, the Democrats are trying to do now, is they're looking for the next victim. And then they rally around the next victim. Next victim could be somebody whose, daughter died trying to give birth to a baby. Or the next victim could be, the child that was born with two separate organs and a mess up in the DNA. So, maybe we got to make a decision if it's a boy or girl or this and that. And so they look for the next victim and they victimize everybody. So we got to help all the victims. And then before you know it, you're a victim too. So that's what the Democrats are doing. Republicans forget. So last time watching Spencer, I was just looked up his first name. I couldn't remember it. Spencer Pratt and Steve Hilton. Now let's look at their politics. How Republican are they? I mean, in this state, they wouldn't be Republicans at all. And yet we were rallying around them. I'm sure the president was keeping an eye to see, and I'm sure the president is thrilled this morning that they're both going to be in runoffs, which is unbelievable for California. Now, did the president of the United States go, wait a minute? What does he think about abortion? Wait a minute. What does he think? He's like, you know what? This is the best we're going to get. And this is pretty damn good. And that's the thought process we have to do in the state of Maine. We have to start working together. I was on the platform committee for President Trump when he was getting ready to build his platform before running again in 24. And oh my God, it was a war. And I'm sitting here going, we have somebody that can win and has got all this money behind him, and we can get rid of the crazy policies of Biden, which are basically no policies at all, close the border and build our country again. And you're arguing about where you should put the period and where you should cross the T. And that's what we have. We have those wars that we don't need. And in the state of Maine, we have the same thing. We have to come together. For anybody in the future that's thinking of becoming chair or getting into some leadership, we have to build that coalition and get everybody together around a table and say, you're being listened to, but we have to, at the end of the day, it's like a board. I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards, and you get the board members around a table, you argue the issues, and at the end, you walk out with one decision that we all agree on. And we have to look at the Maine GOP as a board, and we don't. And we don't. So and then the last thing I've done recently was I had President Trump's petitions, 7,000 names. I knew every single person that was crossed out that might have thought they were Republicans. Mind you, there were a few, crazy ass people. Sorry about the word here, but that signed his petition knowing full well that they were going to be rejected, and they wrote things like big clown or whatever, and wrote their names and all that. But the ones that we were able to go back and verify, we sent them voter registration cards saying, you obviously thought President Trump should be the next president, so you need to be a Republican. And then we took my lists and all the people that were crossed and are not registered, sent them all. And then finally we took I think it was about 39,000, which was the dinner table's list of independents that signed up for that petition for to eliminate boys and girls sports.
No, I think you're the voter ID.
Was it the voter ID? Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're right.
No, you're good.
Yeah, the voter ID, and that was about 39,000.
And when you say you're talking about a particular group that also exists that you helped found, I believe, right?
Yeah. I mean,
the Common Sense for Maine PAC.
Common Sense for Maine PAC was involved, and we had people, and some of the people you may know, Nancy Baum was very important, Jim Booth, James Dupree. We got a whole bunch of folks together, and we sat down and started working on, and we did send those out. And we think it was between a 1% to 2%, voter registration out of those lists, which, by the way, we just had Scott Pressler show up in the state of Maine, and we're going to be working with him hopefully in the summer and fall on more voter registration using his lists, which are great lists, which are independent that really should be Republicans. They meet certain criteria. And he said, 1% or 2% is about right. And so we were able to get that. Mind you, we have a wonderful Secretary of State that refused to give us, voter registration cards, and tried to hold us back. But we fought through. But anyways, we're still working. That's what Florida did. And now they have like 1 million more Republicans than Democrats in Florida, even though we all know that a lot of New Yorkers and, folks that Californians have moved to Florida for economic reasons, but even though they bought the politics, they were still able to get about 1 million more Republicans in Florida than Democrats. So they were able to shift that paradigm. But that's what we got to do in the state of Maine. We got to work together. We have to stop fighting. And the number one thing I'm concerned right now, and hopefully we work very, very hard, is after the primary next Tuesday, is to pull the party back together again, because that's another issue. The name calling and the divisiveness has to end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think candidates trying to show how they compare to their opponents, is smart, right? You gotta show like this is who I am versus who they are, and like the reality is, no matter if you think that the Republicans are being harsh to the other Republicans right now, wait till you see what the Democrats do to them. So I think that it's fair game to talk about these things because like there if again like I said it's going to come out even worse, and so we need to be aware of what are the potential holes, what are the things that our candidates might have, and in order to better understand like who is the candidate that has the best chance of winning. And that's the question we should be asking. Again, going back to it shouldn't be like the purity test, because if we were doing that and Susan Collins were running for the first time, we would run somebody against her that wouldn't be able to win the state of Maine, right? And like we can. Republicans can piss and moan about the fact that like Susan Collins isn't conservative enough for them, but the reality is like if the person who you think is conservative enough would not be able to win the state of Maine, so we would trade a moderate Republican. Some might argue even more moderate than that, but we would trade a moderate Republican for a radical leftist like Graham Plattner. I mean, Plattner, we're very fortunate that he has like so much baggage, but like his views are shared by others that if we didn't have Collins in there, we would have like a Troy Jackson, right? Like who literally is a socialist, and wants to take away, like wants to ruin business and the economy out of this like virtue signal, trying to be able to help people, which is absolutely ridiculous. He wants to use anyway. It's like this is the reality, and so like we should be asking the question with Maine's governor, on the Republican side, like which candidate has the best chance of winning a general election, knowing what we actually know that this is Susan Collins, Maine, if that makes sense.
I
And
agree.
so rather than saying like which one fits my purity test, I think that
That's
I mean, feel free, vote however you want, people, but like ultimately that's the reality of the situation.
That's exactly right. You choose the primary, um, if you will, candidate that can beat the Democrat. I mean, that's the game we play. And people
Yep.
have a tendency to not, I've always said this and I'm going to say it again. You may not like the rules, but learn the rules so you can play the game right and win. And we don't
Yep.
let, when somebody doesn't like the rule, I don't like that rule. Well, okay, then, I don't like paying the taxes. Okay, well, then do something about it, learn the rules and find out what you're going to do about it to help yourself, keep more income. Because that's what your accountants do all day long.
Yep.
So yeah, we have a tendency we don't think like that, and we need to think more like that, and we need leaders to explain it to the folks that this is the way we got to think, not not hand spoon feeding you and telling you who you should vote for and what is important to you, but understand that we win as a team. We don't win separately. And
Right.
and, and it's a team sport, no matter how you look at it. But 100% agree with you. And I'm gonna, I'm there 6 months and one exact day, and that's it. And then the rest of the time, because I tell people my wallet might be in Florida, but my heart's in Maine. And I will keep on fighting for the state of Maine, and I will continue working. And we're going to do another voter drive. So if anybody's listening, they want to get involved, we're going to work with Scott Pressler, and we're going to keep on doing voter drives, and we're going to keep on fighting because we can and we should for what we believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes beyond this election cycle. And again, as you were saying, like post primary, we need to work together. Who's the candidate? Whoever that candidate is, do whatever we can to be able to help candidates up and down the ticket to be able to win, and make progress. But if we don't get all the way there, like this is also one of the other problems that we have as a party. And I don't think we should be satisfied and happy if about losing, but we should be encouraged by making progress, and we should ask, okay, what did we do well, what did we not do well, what can we do better in the future. And I think that process hasn't been happening so much. It's been, we just want to be mad and roast people and go away, right? We want to fight, we want to get somebody fired, which some cases is warranted, but we want to get somebody fired, and next year we get so like it would be great. I would love it, and I have hope that we have potential to do this. So get out there, work hard. I would love to win the House, the Senate, and the governorship. That would be incredible. Like to be able to actually fix our state. The Democrats are so bad, and they've done such a poor job running this state. We just can continue to run on Janet Mills' record, which all of them are running, saying that they're very supportive of everything that Janet Mills has done, but they want to do more, right? So they're running, saying, yes, your energy price is high. We need more high priced energy. They're not saying it that way, but that is what they're saying, right? We need more subsidies. We need more windmills. Which are not producing enough energy, right? Like they're creating an environment that's causing everything to go up, and they're saying we need more of that, right? And then somehow trying to position it as though that's going to help us save money, and it's not, right? So they have a failed failed policies that have harmed our state, that are harming the people of Maine, we should be able to win by just continuing to beat that drum. However, like if we just win the House, we should be thankful that we made progress and then figure out, okay, how do now we advance that? We need to think about this as much more of a long-term strategy. The Democrats have been executing on a long-term strategy for 60 years. The Republicans have been playing checkers, like chess versus checkers, right? The Republicans were like, how do we win next cycle? I was like, okay, what about beyond that, right? Like, because what if we do lose? What do we do then? Do we take our ball and go home? Well, we can't. A lot of the Mainers can't afford to leave and go to another state, even though it might be more advantageous to do so. And so, like, how do we actually win? How do we stay here in Maine and win? Well, that's by having a long-term approach and a long-term strategy and executing on that. And I think that's one thing that, anyway, I feel like is sorely missing in Maine politics. And the Republican Party nationally, I think, has a similar issue here. Is that it's always been about, like, some people have said that it's amazing that the Republicans are so successful at winning elections, given that they only focus on the next election. And I think that's a true statement. I think, but we need to have a better long-term strategy. And so, anyway, but yes, we got to support whoever wins the primary because, like them or not, they're better than the alternative. Like,
100%.
like, yeah. So anyway, but
Yeah, no,
but yeah, good.
100%. And we have to understand, the other thing that you have to understand is, you know, sport teams do it all the time. They study films of their opponents
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
what they did right. God forbid that we did that. No, we need to do that. That's
yeah,
exactly, again, you have to look at this as, people look at it as an ideological, I don't know, ideas. Politics is politics. It's not that ideologic. It's you're playing the game of politics and you want your team to win because we believe our ideas are better. We believe we can govern better. We believe we care about. We're there to give people a hand up, not hold them down. And
yeah.
and that's the big tent that I'm talking about. We as a group have certain beliefs. We believe the government is there to maybe protect the people, but not to squash the people like communism and
Yeah.
socialism does. If you like that, then go live in Europe, as far as I'm concerned, and give that a
Yeah.
try. You like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I had another thought, and I somehow have. Like one of the things that, like, you talk about, like, studying the Democrats versus the Republicans, right? Like, here's an example. This is something that's actionable. Saying it out loud will make some Republicans angry with me and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm at a place where I don't care because I want to help us win. I don't want people to like me. And so, like, one of the things that the Democrats do, right? Is that when you look at their party platform, it's a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs with flowery language about caring about people and wanting to help people, right? They're not outlining that they're going to eliminate private health care and health insurance. That's not what they're saying, right? They're saying there are people in need. We want to help the people in need, right? But they're not telling you everything that they're going to do. Like, they never, like Janet Mills, when she ran in 2022, she didn't tell she actually told everybody that she wasn't going to do anything to change the abortion laws. As soon as she was elected, she put in a plan to make abortion access all the way up until birth legal. Like, I'm not saying, by the way, that we should lie. I don't agree with that. But there is a question about, like, how much we need to say in order to be able to win. So when you look at the party platform for the Republican Party versus the party platform for the Democrat Party, I think we say way too much. I think it's way too long. I think there are way too many things that are in there that are the only thing that they will accomplish. To me, it's a couple things about party platform. One, I feel like it's a virtue signal. I know that the Democrats are usually the ones that virtue signal, but it's really a virtue signal for us to be able to say, this is where we eventually want to go. And it's like, well, you're convincing people not to go this far with you because you may want to go here. I may want to go there. there are people out there that want to go here. They don't want to go all the way there. And if we tell everybody this is where we're going, they won't even come with us here, right? And this is the problem, one of the problems that exists with our platform because it's way too detailed. There's way too much information in it, and it's not actionable. Like nobody, like I think people think that when they're creating the platform, they're acting like little legislators, and it's like they're legislating something, but they're actually not accomplishing anything outside of giving the Democrats an opportunity to use against us because they're going to look at it and be like, here, this is what they want to do. Every Republican is not necessarily in agreement. We can't hold the legislators accountable to this. We don't even make them sign something saying that they agree with it. So
Can I make an example? Can I make an
yeah,
example of that?
yeah, 100%.
One of the time when I was chair, one of the platforms that was argued on the floor, and oh my God, was we don't teach sex education in school. So the kids graduated and they're 18 years old, and they didn't have any sex education classes or biology and all that. That's up to the parents. And you're like, your point is what you're trying to do is to get a lot of these awful books that are there for elementary kids to read, right? That was the big picture. We
Right.
didn't want to sexualize our young kids, especially elementary schools. 100% agree, right? You got to be appropriate. But then we get, like you said, we get narrow, we get tunnel vision, we get crazy to the point where we don't want so what are you saying? The day before you graduate, you don't know anything, and then at 18 and a half, when you graduate, you get married, you don't know what's going on. Are we in third world countries here or what? And so this is a prime example of tunnel vision. We
Right.
have to be much more, we're not advocating to each other. We're advocating to the people of the state of Maine to say, we're the people that represent you the best.
Right.
Give us a chance.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we need to think about is like when you're running a campaign, you're not running a campaign to Republicans. When you're creating a party platform, the goal should be creating a party platform that is as conservative and as Republican as we can make it, while also creating an opportunity for people who might not identify currently as Republicans to say, I can get behind that. That's what
Yes.
you're doing. But you're
Yes.
not, it's not a virtue signal. It shouldn't be, right? It's not an opportunity. Like I think there's some people in the Republican Party that are so afraid that if they let things go from the
Yes.
platform, that will again, going back to the purity test that we do within the Republican Party,
Yes.
that will cause
Yes.
the Republican Party to cease to be the shining example that it is to the
Yes.
world. By the way, it's not a shining example, right? Like
That
it already is
you
not
don't
viewed
win. So how
positively,
shiny is
and we
it?
don't. Well, exactly, we don't win. And so, like part of what people are pushing for, and they're trying to do again, they think they're legislating something by getting this stuff in the platform. When it's like, why don't you go get elected or help us get elected, help us take back our state, and then have people propose these bills in Augusta? That's fine. And that's where the conversation belongs, or form a pack that's focused on getting candidates elected that meet these standards and look like this, and kind of approach it from that perspective if that's what you want to do. But it's like we're so confused within the Republican Party. We're so tactically inept and ignorant of reality that we end up that's part of this is an example of why we lose that. And like I think we have a communication problem. I had something come up recently where I had an opportunity. I've had a number of opportunities. Like if I wanted to blow some things up, I could have done it, right? Like at so many different levels in the Republican Party, it seems like we're looking for opportunities to fight one another, which is idiotic. When we're in the minority and we don't have enough friends as it is, and we're like, how do we get rid of some of our friends, right? I don't think that's
Right.
necessarily happening. Right? I don't think people are sitting there thinking that logically and consciously, but that's what seems to be happening. And there are a number of opportunities this year in particular that I've seen where it was like I could go negative on this, um, and like I had to be like, as much as I want to, because I'm really irritated. We need to figure out how to work together with the people that are on our team rather than trying to tear down, because we're like, if we're not all rowing in the same direction, we're not going to win Maine, right? And so like I think more people within the Republican Party need to have this type of perspective and say, how do we work well together? We need to build something positive, rather than just like being and continuing with the mantra that currently exists for the Republican Party, which is that it appears to be the party of no, right? And I think we need to demonstrate that we're actually like what we're fighting for is something beautiful and incredible, and that we're
We
actually
need to
fighting
fight for it.
for
Yes.
something. We're fighting
Yes.
for something, but
Right.
what we're fighting for is a different worldview than what the
Yes.
Democrats. It's interesting because like I'm talking way too much on this podcast. Sorry, Demi. I just, but what I find to be interesting is like if you turn the clock back 20, 30 years, right? You would talk to Democrats and Republicans, and effectively they would largely say that they're trying to get to the same place. Like the end game, a healthy economy, healthy families, healthy schools, education, right? All these things, public safety. They essentially want to get to the same place. They just have a different perspective on how to get there, right? But that's not the case anymore, right? The Democrats have a very different worldview and vision of what they want America to look like than what the Republicans and really the average American wants America to look like. And so we need to highlight that what we're fighting for are beautiful things such as a healthy economy, a healthy even environment. Like a lot of the environmental like energy push stuff is actually bad for the environment in all reality. We actually care about the environment. Yes, we do. We want to make America sustainable into the future. We're not looking to burn it down just because we're pro economy, but we care about the economy. We care about families. We care about healthy families. We care about healthy children, healthy relationships. These are all really positive things. We want to empower people to not need to be stuck on government aid, right? We want them to be their own people where they can go home at night and know that they bought their house, they're paying their bills, and they can do that with pride. And so we need some reshaping, I think. But anyway,
I think you said something that, and I'm going to try to paraphrase kind of, and I hope you don't mind me doing this.
yeah,
We used to be, it used to be the Democrats were, yes, we can help you. Yes, you poor person that, are drug addicted. And yes, we'll get you a campus, you can live here. And oh, look at you get clean. See that, yes, yes, yes. And we're no, no, no. If all we did is turned it around and became a yes party, yes, you get to pick which school your children goes to. Yes, you get to decide what's stuck in your arm. Yes, you get to decide which religion and to be able to profess your beliefs. It's okay. We're fine with that. Yes, you can love your country and love the flag and celebrate. And yes, and if we just turned it around instead of being no, 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 and more yes, 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 you'd be shocked. We would do well. Well, and that's what is happening. I was listening to Spencer Pratt yesterday. He's saying
yeah,
yes to moms and yes to dogs. Because what drug addicts are doing? They're injecting the dogs to see if the dogs die, to make sure they didn't have too much fentanyl in their mix and they don't die themselves. So they're killing the dogs instead. How is that okay
yeah,
for Democrats? And yes, to moms, so they don't have to walk by, streets that are covered with feces and drug addicts and, booze and everything else and vomit. So what he said to them is yes to moms and yes to animals. See, switching it around. He didn't go around going, I'm a Republican. He's saying, I'm here for moms and animals. I'm here for you. And that's where we have to switch, turn that around and do that and get rid of a lot of that anger that sometimes a party harbors. And, life is difficult. I having lived to be 70 and growing up our kids and everything else, life, it's not always perfect every single day. It can be rough. Life is rough. But you have to get up every morning and say, thank you, God, I'm still here. I appreciate it. Appreciate nobody's dying of cancer and nobody got killed in a car accident. My husband didn't have his leg cut off. I don't know. We work in the lawnmower and the tractor, and say yes. And then night before you go to bed, you go, thank you for another wonderful day. And if we would think more positively, that we're all, a lot of us are very, spiritual. I think a lot of Republicans are.
yeah.
We should be more thankful. If we were, we would be a party of yes. and we need to stop being a party of yes, because that's how we got to think. Otherwise, we're going to keep on losing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, some of the other things like the social issues, we don't tend to do well on social issues. Even if the people are the majority with us, the way it seems to me like the way in
Presented.
which we go about it, it kind of presents us as being those angry people rather than being people who are like trying to just ask questions, hold accountable. I think we need, it's interesting. Like, I think this is where the Democrats are smart and the Republicans have not been, is in tactics, right? And so it's all, we don't think about what's the appropriate way to go about that. Look, if you care about like some of those like social issues, my recommendation to you, especially if you're a Christian, is to see how you can engage with the Christian Civic League of Maine. It's a great organization. It has values that are largely aligned with the Republican Party, but not aligned with every Republican. And so if you want to look at how can you effectively advance that type of an agenda, well, work with them, but support the Republican candidate, knowing that regardless, the Republican candidates are far better than the Democratic candidates on all the issues that you care about, right? And so we don't have to have our purity test. We can have our groups within the movement, the broader movement, that are focused on what we care about first and foremost. And if you don't see that group that exists, we'll form it. If there are enough people that agree with you, you can get a group of people together that can advance that kind of an agenda. I mean, the Common Sense Terrain PAC is an example. You have the dinner table was one that existed in the past, and technically they still exist. They're not as active, I think, this cycle, but they're still there, that are focused on faith, family, and freedom, and they want to get candidates elected that meet those standards. And they were working very actively to make that happen. And you also have in the Common Sense for Maine PAC is saying who are the candidates that have common sense policies that we can help in key areas where we can shift, where we think these like 80-20 issues will help us get over the edge. And like, how can we, there are ways that you can focus on the things that you care about most, even if the whole Republican Party doesn't agree with that. But I think, again, we got to think more strategically. So anyway, we kind of got off, but a bit. So, but I appreciate, like, I just want to say thank you. Like, you've done a lot of thankless things for the Maine Republican Party. I also still don't believe that you're 70. I don't think that adds up. I think, like, I was thinking it earlier. I'm like, I don't think so. Anyway, but you've done so much.
Smoking, drinking, and sun. That's what I've told everybody. I said I worked too hard. I didn't get a chance to do all the naughty things.
Oh, there you go. Well, I imagine some decent genes probably didn't hurt either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate the years of service, uncompensated, to try to advance the cause of the Maine Republican Party and get like common sense policies governing our state rather than ones that are destructive, which are being pushed by the Democrats. And, I mean, making the decision to run against, Angus King. I mean, that was, there were a lot of people that were super excited that you were running. We were glad that we had a candidate that represents our values that was on the ticket. But ultimately, like beating a behemoth, two-time governor, longtime senator, beloved by, I think he's seen by many Mainers as like Maine's grandfather, because but he just seems like a really kindly, gentlemanly old man who seems like a moderate, even though practically he's more of he's a Democrat, and his son running for governor as a Democrat kind of proves that. But either way, like running that race, which obviously like you ran it to win, but like I just think it's so hard to unseat an incumbent unless Angus King had been on the Epstein list and there was substantial proof of it. I think it's really hard to beat a guy like Angus King in Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think you had to know that, but you ran it to win, and we appreciate the sacrifice and the time, and I do, and all the again all the years. Sad that you're no longer registered to vote in Maine, but again, I understand it, and I appreciate.
I'm still working.
Yeah,
still
and
volunteering.
I appreciate that, and you're around, and so thank you so much for everything that you've done and continue to do, and hopefully we can shift things here in the state of Maine, and you can change your voter register. You can vote. You can re-register in Maine in the future when we get our no taxes and tips in line here in Maine and whatnot. So, yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. No, that's what we need to do because I've told a number of people, don't forget you're not getting taxed now, but if all the quote unquote rich people walk, you'll be taxed. The government's like a machine. It's like a monster. It's still going to want to be fed. And if it isn't those people's money, it's going to be your money. And so, what did Thatcher say? Socialism works great until they run out of your money. Yeah, so they're
right.
gonna. Yeah, so that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I keep on telling anybody that listen, and of course they have no idea about energy and why a lot of electric bills are going sky high. Do your little research and figure that one out too. So yeah, it's insane, but you know what? We got to keep on fighting. We can't quit. We can't give up. We got to keep on fighting, and I will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I appreciate that and look forward to seeing where things go from here. So thank you so much. And everybody else, we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you. Thank you.